And, we also need to deal with energy. I mean, this country has been blessed with enormous energy resources. I was talking to T. Boone Pickens, and he said, in terms of natural gas, we have enough to last for over 1,000 years. And we now have the ability to liquefy, which means it can be exported. We need to do something with our archaic energy exportation laws. They're crazy. And, with the oil that we can recover through fracking now, next year or the year after that, we will become the largest oil producers in the world. No thanks to the current administration, which we'll take credit for, I guarantee.
Yeah, 300 years of oil underground right now, 300 years.
Easily.
Currently, yeah.
Easily.
How many years of oxygen do we have left? I mean, it's all very good what you're saying, but the reality of it is.
Well, I'm
how many
coming to
years
that
of
part.
oxygen?
I'm coming to that part.
Yeah.
And then what you
Still
have,
gotta live on this planet.
what you have to do, you take the Environmental Protection Agency, and they have to work in conjunction with business, industry, and academia to find the most environmentally friendly ways to exploit our tremendous resources. That's the way you do it, rather than using them to suppress the development. That's how we make progress. So we still have standards.
Is that like clean coal? They've
Some,
been for 40 years trying to clean it up and they haven't been able to do it yet. We could be dead before they do that.
well, I'm not sure that you have heard about the latest clean coal fire technology, have you?
I haven't heard of it working. I haven't heard of it actually operating.
Yeah, it works. It works very well. But what we have to do is, I was asked the question once, well, what about global warming or environmental change? And, the fact of the matter is, at any point in time, temperatures are either going up or temperatures are going down. You probably remember in the 70s on the front of Newsweek magazine, there was a big iceberg saying the new ice age was coming. And then it was, we're going to burn up and we're going to melt all the glaciers. Well, at any point in time, temperature's either going up or down. So as far as I'm concerned, that's irrelevant. What is relevant is that we do have a responsibility to take care of our environment. We always have a responsibility to the people who are coming after us. And we need to take that also out of the political realm and deal with that in a logical fashion. That's how we use the Environmental Protection Agency. That's how we use them to work with our universities and with our businesses and industries. Because I think we're all interested in that. And what we do is we allow people to inflame it and make it into a big political issue, when in fact we all benefit from having a clean environment. And that's been the problem with just about everything that gets politicized. You look at something like the IRS scandal. The IRS scandal is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's an issue of the government using a government agency to prosecute its enemies. Are you kidding me? That's not a Democrat or Republican issue. That's something that every American should be alarmed about. And as long as we keep making these things into political issues and getting on sides and fighting about them, they will continue. Because that actually encourages the people who are being dishonest and who are doing things under the covers. And right now, I think you will find that most Americans don't trust the government. This is a very, very bad place for us to be. Is it possible to turn it around? I think it is. But it can't be turned around with extreme partisanship. Because all that does is it lifts the ship to one side and then back to the other side. And then back to the other side and back to the other side without any forward progress. And we need to begin to make forward progress, so we need to do things that actually work for everybody. And not for this group or this group, or say that, well, this group had a bad time, therefore now let's do this and make up for it. Whatever you do, when you do it that way, you're being unfair to somebody. And I believe that the founders of the nation had a different thought process in mind. Now, this is not to say that the founders of this nation were all perfect people. They were not perfect people. And they had some faults, without question. And a lot of times, when I talk about this, people say, well, some of the founders had slaves. And they did, no question about it. But the majority of the signers did not have slaves, and in fact, were vehemently opposed to slavery. And, a lot of people say, yeah, but they felt that slaves were only 3/5 of a person. And that tells you how they really felt about them. Well, you have to go back and read the documents and read the arguments to know what was actually going on there. You see, the Southerners, who were the slave owners, wanted the slaves to count as a full person, but not because they were good people. It was because it would give them more representation. And if they had more representation, they would have the power to then spread slavery throughout the entire nation. So the Northerners and the abolitionists were actually the ones who came up with the 3/5 compromise, because that would even out the playing field and then potentially give them the leverage they needed later to abolish slavery altogether. Most people have no idea that that's the way. And there's just a lot of stuff like that in our history that most people have no idea what they're talking about. And that's one of the reasons that we wrote the book, America the Beautiful, which really is a tremendous history lesson for this country and the things that made this into a great country. And the reason also that we use a lot of quotations in that book, because there are a lot of people who try to rewrite history. So you use the actual quotations that came from the people. It's much more difficult to distort that and say that they didn't say it, particularly in terms of what the beliefs of our founders were. A lot of people try to say that they were deists, that they didn't believe in God, or certainly not in an act of God. Well, the things that we wrote in there, you can see that they said no deist would say things like that. And even you look at 1887, when they were having so much trouble with, framing the Constitution. And it looked like the whole thing was going to fall apart. The small states, the big states, they all had different agendas. And the elder statesman, Ben Franklin, 81 years old, stood up in front of the whole assembly and he said, "Gentlemen, stop." He says, "During the Revolutionary War, every other phrase out of your mouth was 'God save us.'" And he did. And now you don't want to talk about it. He said, "Let us get on our knees and let's pray and ask God to give us wisdom." And they did. And they got up and they put together a 16 1/3 page document, which has stood the test of time. And is really an amazing document as you dissect it and look at it. And that was the commencement of the tradition of starting each congressional session with prayer. And, I'm not a person who ever would want to impose my religious beliefs on anybody else. But I do believe that there is something fundamentally good about having a belief system that elevates people, as opposed to one that just is based on who you are and what you think. And it served us extraordinarily well. Took a ragtag bunch of militiamen in 1776 to the dominant economic power in the world in less than 100 years. Think about how unlikely that is to occur. So obviously there were some things that were being done that were done in the correct way. Needs to be thought about. I think also, and I'll finish up on this, we need to be thinking about our position in the world. We are the pinnacle nation in the world, which means we have enormous responsibilities. And we can't just sort of lead from the back of the bus, just react to stuff as it's going on. We have to help plan and strategize things. Doesn't mean we have to have our noses in everybody's business. But when you don't have a leader, it's sort of like having a third grade classroom with no teacher. You know, a lot of squabbles break out real quick, and there's just nobody to help organize things. And, you know, right now, there is a huge world problem called ISIS. And I'm not sure that we're taking it anywhere near as serious as we should be. These are people who want to destroy us. And they want to destroy our way of life. There's no negotiating for people like that. There's no containment for people like that. There's only one solution for people like that. And that's making ISIS as was. And that's what you have to do. You just get rid of them.